Harri, thanks so much for joining me on the first ever Surf Nation Football Focus podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Obviously heard a lot about you from Andy, and then having spent a day or so doing some research around your game. Really, really excited to talk about it. As you well know, defenders don't get enough praise, do they, about their game?
Unfortunately, they do not.
Hey, we're going to start at a little bit of feedback that you gave me. I asked you some questions around strengths and improvements and area you're trying to get better. So the first one that you gave me was your strengths. You said three things. You said composure, decision-making, and range of passing. So we're going to talk about range of passing with some clips, but I want to first ask you about your interpretation around basically putting composure and decision-making together. How would you describe that as a strength?
Well, I think the two can oftentimes be related, but I like to think that I'm good on the ball, and more often than not, I'm making the right decision, especially when pressure comes. Not panicking, but having the ability to retain the ball, keep possession for the team, especially as a center back. You're more often than not building out when teams will come at you and try and press. And so decision-making goes hand in hand with composure, because you have to be relaxed on the ball, willing to switch it out to the other center back, play back to the goalkeeper if it's on. And I listed those as strengths because in college, fortunately, through in-game experience, that has come a long way for me. And one of the things we talk about as a program is finding the right areas to play. So if the momentum of the game isn't going your way, maybe you just conceded 3 corners, maybe they had a shot on goal, probably not the best decision to try and play out. And so where that decision-making comes in is, and in my mind, that comes with composure, is being able to find the right pass. And so maybe that's a 40-yard ball into the forward where they can knock it down to attacking midfielder, switch it out, and then suddenly, instead of building out of your 18, your team progresses and you're building out and retaining the ball in their half and along the way halfway line.
Brilliant. How much of those two elements, again, stay on those two elements, composure, decision-making, how much of a technical foundation do you think that helps you in those regards?
Oh, I think it's everything. You have to be good on the ball in order to have composure. You have to be able to play risky passes, especially as a center back playing in a midfield, playing the right foot. I think that's huge. If you're playing a midfielder, it's not enough just to give them the ball. If a defender's off their right shoulder, then you're probably not going to play it on that side. You're going to want to play it to their back foot so they can either turn out or maybe play another center back, another midfielder, maybe even another fullback. So technical ability and decision-making and having composure is everything, because being composed on the ball and having the right idea is one thing, but having the technical execution to go and make the passes that you want to make, you can't make composed good passes if you don't have the ability to do so.
I love that. Risky passes, you said. In a back three, where you're playing in a back three, how important is it for you to, like I said, you're in a back three, you're going to have more numbers back there, probably with a holder or two, but you're talking there about decision making and progressive passes. That's a tougher skill, right?
Oh, it's very tough. And again, that comes with decision making and composure and knowing the right time to play those passes. Whether you're playing left, right, or centrally, you can open up and go to play a defense splitting ball that maybe gets the attacking midfielder in a bit of space, but it's only a good ball if you have a plan behind it. Maybe you see a winger running so that the attacking midfielder can turn and then play. And I think that's something that our team and me as well overlook and need to work on, is that ability to have a plan and intention with your passing. So maybe a player's in a decent bit of space, maybe the 9 drops down and can get the ball, but it doesn't really matter if there's no one supporting him or coming underneath him, or he has a plan to turn and play someone. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Let's look at some of these passes. So I clipped a few of them up.
I'm excited to see what you found.
Yeah. Let's see. Go to. How do I make this bigger? Oh, here we go. Play video.
We got a good start. Like we said. We got a good start. Both teams in a 4-4-2.
All right.
Teams playing possession.
One of the things that I noticed was you're often playing you're a left-footed player who's playing as a right-sided centre back.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Why is that?
It came down to personnel. So I've always played with Taha Kina. He's my center back partner, not in this picture. Unfortunately, picked up an injury late. And so, unfortunately, he couldn't play in this game. So we had Tanner step in as a left back to play center back. And he, being left-footed, more likely than not, was going to play on the left. So my coach preferred to play me on the right because he thought my right foot was better for whatever reason. And there's Taha in this video as well.
Meanwhile, the Bears work on their back line, looking for
this
possession.
Pass
Here's
here
a good ball up the far side.
Yeah, I like that pass.
You've clipped that with the outside of the left, right? I'm just going to go back to that.
And honestly, I never played right center back in my life, but interestingly enough, to some extent, I kind of prefer it because you have that ability to come in and play either to your right or your left. You're not locked into playing to one side, if that makes sense. And of course, you can do that on the left, but when you drive in as a center back, you can play both ways if you're playing inverted.
You don't find that limiting at all by playing left-sided? Is it because that picture there, you see the 25 low, you see the holding midfielder. Both of those are probably pressable. Actually, 3 white. Princeton there have 3 players around that can jump on any of those 3 easier passes.
Yeah, well, I trust my 6, so if that left winger was going to come and press me, then it's simple as playing to the 6 and having him knock it to the fullback. That being said, if his shape is wrong, then I have no problem opening up on my right foot and just passing it around him. And that's something I had to work on throughout the season because Andy probably told you, but I am a very left-footed player, unfortunately.
Hey, you pulled an absolute worldie out of this pass. Talk about this technique here. Is this something that – how often are you bringing this club out of the bag, I should say?
I mean, for me, it depends on the playing surface. So here we're playing on grass, which to me, much better surface.
Here's a good ball up the far sideline. It's down.
On the shape of the opposition we're playing, so no disrespect to Princeton, but their back line was an absolute shambles. So I probably could have sprayed it over the top, but there was such a big gap that I saw an opening and I wanted to play it on the ground and with pace. So I'd say fairly decently in terms of splitting defenders, not as often as I would like, because usually when we're playing, teams like to sit in. And I think that's just the nature of college soccer. Not a lot of teams come out and press, so there aren't a lot of opportunities to play those passes.
Right side, go Peters settles.
And I think this clip shows, to your point before about the number 25 as a right back coming deeper. Well, I feel comfortable pinging a ball over the winger to the fullback. Here it's to our winger, Jamin. But if that 25 went higher, I have no problem playing a 30-yard ball in the air to him. And maybe, that's not a proper way of doing it because as a center back, you should probably open out and try and play the ball around the fullback. But I think what's unique about playing right center back as a left-footed player is I have the ability to play it over the winger to bypass the line.
In recent years,
really and TV just cuts out.
FIU a little bit more.
My coach loved this one
in recent years, and it's honestly a great match for the sport.
Spin on that.
Yeah,
switches fields.
It's amazing you found these clips.
Upfield, trying to get Dadsy on the run.
I see this one here. This interests me because I really like the idea. Now, of course, the problem with some of these clips is you're not looking from a tactical lens. You can't see higher up the pitch.
Of course.
Talk to me about. Obviously, you've been in the press. There's a 3v3. It's fairly obvious that now you're having to go a little bit bigger and you've enticed pressure. What are you expecting higher up the pitch? Do you have physical numbers there in those inside channels, or what's the team profile like up there?
I think in this instance, I saw our left winger, Kojo, a very good player, a bit isolated. He was in a bit of space, whether he realized it or not. I would have liked for us to be on the same page. but I remember him being deeper than the fullback, and the center back was keeping him onside. And so in that moment, I saw a pocket of space for him to maybe make a 5-10 yard sprint and then receive the ball. I mean, he ends up doing a great job of retaining possession. But again, I think a lot of this goes back to recognizing the shape of the other team you're playing.
So important. Brilliant. All right, great start. Next up, improvements. You said you referenced Andy on this here about the physical development. Again, there's two sides that almost roll in together. Actually, three of them almost roll in together. You've got physical development in general. Then you've got a bit more specific, stronger, faster, more agile, 1v1 situations. And then aerially. And I want to take a look at, well, first of all, before we look at the clips, let's go again and just ask you a question. Physical development, how did you find the jump between club, high school to college physically?
I think every college player will say this, but I thought it was pretty immense. I mean, you go as an 18-year-old to suddenly playing against 22-year-olds, and now with 5th and 6th years, some of these guys are 23, 24 years old. And so the jump can be pretty significant. All
right, so let's just say I gave you a time machine and said, go back to 16-year-old Harry. What would you do in those last two? Could you do anything in those last 2 years of your pre-college development that would set you up better physically, do you think? Have you thought of this?
I've thought about this all the time. And in those years, I actually spent a significant amount of time at a purely strength and speed building sort of performance gym. And they do a great job of making players faster and stronger. But looking back, I wish I did none of that. You know, I put too much emphasis on preparing for the physical side of the game. Where I've come to realize is that, yes, you have to put additional work in, but that just comes with age. You can't expect yourself to be fast and super strong at 16, 17, 18 years old. Eventually, you'll become a young man. You'll grow into yourself. You'll become 20, 21, 22, where players are still developing physically. And so I wish if I had a time machine, I could go back, tell myself, okay, it's important to put emphasis on this, but become more fit and just play as much as you can as opposed to that, because you'll know that as soon as you get to college, those things will come on their own. And I think that's important because when you're 16, 17, 18, those are some of the most crucial years of development. I mean, there's a reason that's the age that academy players turn pro, is because in those years, players can make a significant jump. And so maybe this isn't a conventional answer, but I would probably tell myself to scrap all of that and focus on developing as a player, solely developing as a player, whether it be technically, tactically, playing small-sided, whatever it looks like. You know, when I was 16, 17, 18, I thought I had to get physically a lot stronger. And looking back, that's not the case at all. One of the biggest jumps is just fitness. Being able to run 90 minutes is pretty challenging. We cover a lot of distance. So it's not always being the strongest guy on the team. More often than not, and it's very position specific, but if you're more fit than the opposition, then you're going to be able to cover more ground and get to more places than they are. It's not a matter of, you know, winning a 50-50 duel and overpowering them every single time.
Brilliant. Yeah, let's look at some of those aerial duels. Now, these are wins, and I actually, again, I looked at the video before I read all your answers, and I thought, I was actually a bit surprised when you said aerially. So these are some clearances that look to be actually pretty strong part of your game, I thought initially.
Have to give Brown as Rogers bends one across the box. Header.
Yeah, I think this is a great clip. You can saw I looked over my shoulder once, maybe twice. And it's really important when you're marking a player in a box, you know where he is at all times. And then one of the things we talk about as a program is making contact with runners. So you'll see there, I know where he is. I have my arm out ready. And as soon as the ball's served, I kind of bump him and I make that first contact so that he can't get across my body. And that I'm in a position where even if it goes over my head, I can maybe drop step, concede a corner. That's as if it's a very perfect ball. But generally, you know, I was in a good position to go out, win the ball, and head it out for, I don't know.
Oh, it's brilliant defend, because you can see there that, like, all right, he's got a little momentum. He's on your blind side. Your goalkeeper, if he makes contact in this, he's definitely scoring. So I love that there, that it's very, very difficult to defend at the back post, keep the player, the ball in line, but your body shape here, I love this clip.
Rodgers bends one across the box.
Brilliant.
Away by the defense.
Get distance on it as well.
And you saw a little bit of what I'm about to say in.
I did get a lot better with heading as the season went on, but I just still think it could use improvement. These are highlight clips. They're meant to be good, so it doesn't really show the full picture.
That's a good one there.
Just shows how quick Gogo Peters is.
And how open this match has become.
Yeah, see a clip like that, I win the ball, but I'm heading it to the other team. It's just as good as the striker bringing it down to their winger as I am giving them the ball. So even though I won the ball, that's not enough, and that's something we talk about as a program is sort of finding an outlet and having a plan. And that's not always the time, okay, we want to head the ball to someone so we can keep possession and play, but you want to put it in a good area.
Another cross into the box, headed away.
See, that's a good clip there.
Yeah, that's a good clearance. That's a good clearance.
See again, body shape, look, aware.
Another cross into the box, headed.
I like about it here as well is that you give yourself a yard or two by dropping back a yard just to go and then meet it in momentum. So now you can attack that ball a bit more naturally, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that helps too.
The right side, Pratt.
Yeah, aerial ability is crucial in college. I mean, you've seen in these clips, but so many teams go long.
A lot of crosses.
A lot of deep crosses, yeah, unfortunately.
All right, last one. Oh, this is just a win of the halfway line. Yeah, step in, like that. And then 1v1, we'll bring this one in as well. 1v1 defending. These are...
This time with a little bit of room to get going. Tries to turn on the Jets.
Some of
I remember going over that one in film.
This time with
all right, talk to me about it.
The air for the ball.
Andy would laugh at this clip.
Lagos.
I think
this time with a little bit of...
In the beginning, I did a decent job of making close contact without getting too close. I just think I let him turn too easily. And again, that comes back to physical development. And that's something I want to work on as well because, if I'm stronger, then I can hold him off. And then in this picture, the left center back can get the ball and keep the ball for our team. But he just turns me a little too quickly. And I think I was a little caught off guard that he didn't take a touch, that the ball just kind of ran. But even still, I have positioning on him. And so even you see I'm doing my best to hold him back, but he's just a flat-out better athlete than I am, so he's going to beat me to the ball.
Yeah, that's one where if it's an 18, 19-year-old against a 22, 23-year-old, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? That
yes.
type of situation. Yeah.
And, athletes come in very different shapes and sizes. The Yale forward was very good. Very big kid, very direct, very fast, very physical. Even if I spent the next 2-3 years purely developing myself physically, then I might get to the athletic point that he is. So looking at this clip again, I probably just could have had much better positioning. I didn't have to get as tight as I did because he really only could have gone backwards. And if I'd gotten lower, kind of stood my ground and anticipated him turning, then it would have been as easy as me right there taking 2 steps backwards, either playing the left back, left center back, or maybe even playing all the way back to the goalkeeper.
Lagos.
And then our left center back had to pick up a booking because of my mistake.
I like this one here because you could retreat here, but what makes you stop around here? Because he runs it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one very important aspect of defending as a center back in 1v1 areas such as these is knowing where you are on the field. And so in the beginning, I'm dropping so intently because he's 40 yards from goal. There's no need for me to engage him. You know, as a program, we talk about engaging players around the 18 so they can't get into the penalty box. Why I chose this step is because I don't know if it's instincts, but he just took a big touch and I felt like I could win it. Even if it was a little bit looser, I definitely could have slid and won the ball, but he took a big touch. Andy Prosser, I'll give him credit. He always said the best time to win the ball is when you think you can. And I think this clip just shows that.
Going from the bottom to the top of the screen. Good turn by Stas.
Yeah, this one's from sophomore year. Again, a very physical, very good player. That player, Stas, was drafted to the Philly Union. He's built like a linebacker, we joke about. He's just athletically so gifted. And in this clip, similar to the last one, I just got way too tight. You know, I gave him that ability to turn me. I made it all too easy. I came on one side of him, and yeah, it was just way too easy for him to spin me. I had no reason to engage as closely as I did. That comes down to body shape and then also not getting too touch tight. And these clips are prime examples of where experience is just so important. The viewers can't see, but that clip was from sophomore year. I'm currently a junior now, done with my junior season. And so maybe I made the same mistake my junior year, but like those things all come back to experience. And in my mind, even though I got turned in that clip against Yale for my junior season, my approach was much better than the one in the video where I was getting turned by the Penn forward my sophomore year.
Yeah, it brings us along nicely. Your improvements, I asked you where do you think your game's improved the most? And you said, and I thought this was a great little phrase used, defending properly. So those details that you pick up playing against those physical players, even listening to your insight of the game, you've seen these clips 100 times. Sure. I can feel that because you can pick them up exactly. You know them really, really quickly. That detail that you're defending properly, talk a little bit about that concept of learning that there in college.
Yeah, I'll give credit to my head coach, Chase Wildman. Even though he's a head coach, he spends so much time with the back line instilling us the proper principles of defending. And from what I've learned through playing and also being coached is you have to be incredibly proactive and switched on when you defend. Because as soon as you lose a runner and you don't know where he is, then you're screwed. And then in terms of body shape and all that stuff, we talked about being side on and sort of having a body shape where if you're side on, it's a good angle to be touch tight to a player so he can't turn. But also if the ball's played over you, then you're side on so you can just drop step and run backwards in case the ball's played over you. So those are a few things I picked up. And I think when I originally told you defending principles, that was individual, but also as a back line. There's some principles we really hammer home at Brown. Things I didn't really learn in my developing stages in high school. And even my freshman year of college, we got a coaching change the spring of my freshman year. But I thought it was interesting that I learned these principles so late in my development, but they're really simple and they're incredibly effective. We talk about how the weak side center back sets the defensive line because he can more often than not see it. Fullback's never the deepest. That's just common sense because he can keep everyone offside. Everyone learns this when they grow up playing, but one of the backline members steps up, the other three come back and cover around him. And yes, these are principles, but there's such fine margins in college soccer and maybe even in professional soccer where the slightest hiccup can lead to a goal. So it's really important to iron those things out.
Yeah, actually, this my last video set here. Some clips around positioning that jumped out to me. Now, these clips are so boring and mundane for this generation of TikTok and Instagram. These clips are just interceptions, basic interceptions. But why I wanted to share them on the podcast was basically that
avoided a
element that you talked about of detail and decision making and distances. Now, these are aspects where I've 5-6 clips where I felt that your positioning actually earned you the right just to deal with something really comfortably. Talk about these clips through the lens of what you just articulated there about the unit and how those principles are worked upon.
Well, I think as a defender, you want to make your job as easy as possible. And if you go back to the beginning of the clip, you can see that my body shape's open. I'm aware of what's around me. There's really no forwards around me, so I don't have to mark. So I have the ability to be free in a central position. The right back is marking, so I'm free. So I just drift centrally, anticipating a ball coming centrally. And then it's as easy as that. And I think what's important about that clip too is the fact that my body shape's open. So if that runner flashed in front of me, then I knew he was coming and I knew he was there.
All right, potentially looks as if you're in a bit of bother here.
Left wing trying to serve one inside.
I arguably could have been tighter to the forward, but again, that comes down to decision making. If I had stepped late and he turned me, then I'm completely out of the picture. So that was my initial reaction to drop back in. And then I knew the ball was going out wide. I knew where the forward was. And so I kind of just shaded him where if he did come in the box and go to shoot, I could come out and block it. But if he's in a crossing position, one thing we talk about as Brown is if you're the near side center back, one of your responsibilities is to try your best to block the cross. And so I knew that the fullback was coming in sort of to apply back pressure, or so it's called. And so I just held my ground and was weary that he was probably going to cross the ball.
Even this aspect here, well, I think if you want to judge the detail of a back four or a centre back pairing or a back three, I always think a backwards pass in the final third, just a little drop, you can see the actions. Like this ball goes back and it's like a light switch to your three. You actually, is that the wing back that's on the ball? And you actually...
Yeah, that's the fullback.
Well, yeah, like you leave him there. He's got to get out. I love this here. It's just like as soon as this ball goes back, boom, get out. Look at the... Yeah, it's class. That's only 2-3 yards, but that's continually now condensing the space. Really good.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point too, I think a lot of it's relationships as well. I have a very good relationship with the right back I played with. His name's Grayson Mitchell, one of my best friends. But when you play with guys you build strong chemistry and relationships with, then more often than not, you're going to trust them to get back in and do the dirty work that you're wanting them to do.
Push to the left side, Fenton trying to load up. Another shot blocked by Brown as Sprofera holds his line.
Yeah, Blake's been pretty dangerous.
Again, that goes back to being aware of where you are on the field. If you're shooting from 22 yards away,
he's been the playmaker today.
That's a shot you want to block.
All for Gillespie, dangerous look there, but sniffed out by the vendor's room to get taken care of after this contest.
Oh, I love this clip. It's probably one of my favorite clips. I knew where the forward was the whole time.
Taken care of after
I was dropping in line with him. You can see me looking. I'm running backwards with him, so he doesn't have a head start on me. If the ball goes over me, that's fine. It's a 1v2 situation with the right back. He happened to mishit it a little bit, or maybe I was in a good spot. And one thing we talked about as a back line, as we were progressing through the season, was playing with composure. And in this moment, I could have headed the ball any which way. I chose to head it back to the goalie so that we could keep the ball.
Did you see in real time, did you feel, because sometimes defenders can look as if they're a bit panicked and they're under a bit of pressure. You're talking there about like you love it, you felt as if like almost a flow state. Were you comfortable in this situation here completely throughout?
Completely comfortable. Like I said, if somehow the ball found its way on the wrong side of me and he was in on goal, well, I'm 1v1 with him, but I also have my fullback coming back, so it's really a 1v2 in my mind. And yeah, maybe it was a bit of a flow state, but absolutely no panic there.
That's that completing that pass in transition just when you get an opportunity to. Yeah.
That's important, yeah. That's something I really want to improve on going into next season is, a lot of college teams play so direct. And so, yes, there are times to full out clear the ball and get the back line up, but if you can pop it to your 6 or fullback or maybe an 8, it's very important.
Oh, he turns out to deny. Behind Dadsey, it's a good look for Baker on the left. Back towards center. Mitchell got a touch to it. Dadsey on the ball, takes a bump.
All right, before we get into the final piece, I asked you about extra work. Again, you talked about the positional element and the work you're doing as a unit. But then you also talked about some individual pieces that you're working on with weaker foot. Tennis ball you're working on, still trying to refine that technical piece as well.
Yeah, I love juggling a tennis ball. It's something I try and do for at least an hour and a half every week. I'd probably encourage every single player to do this, even if they're in college still playing and think they have a great technique. I started doing this about a year and a half ago, and it is unbelievably helpful, not only in terms of actually being good on the ball, but for me, it was a huge confidence boost knowing that I'm so comfortable with the ball that I can trust myself to take a first touch where I want it to go, which is crucial when you're trying to develop speed of play.
That individual development piece becomes more important in college as you get more time, responsibility. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that comes out in the college game, because it's so much more competitive, in my opinion, than the club level, is you really see your deficiencies as a player. And that's a really great thing because it becomes clear and obvious what you need to be doing and what you need to work on. And so this spring I pointed out that I wanted to develop my right foot. Maybe it's because sometimes I play right center back when really left-footed. But I noticed that my left foot was very good, but my right foot probably wasn't where I needed it to be. And juggling a tennis ball, those seem so minor. I'm now at a point where I can juggle a tennis ball continuously with my weak foot, which I'm not sure many players can do. And it's really helped in taking first touches, playing even longer passes, shorter passes with intention and accuracy. So.
Brilliant. Very, very interesting. All right, let's finish it up. Life at Brown, Ivy League. Yeah, it's the good stuff now. Ironically, on spring break, studying for a test. We talked a little bit about the transition from a soccer level. Academically, I mean, how's that been going into that level of academia? Tough, difficult, easy transition? What's it like?
I think it's been tough. I think it's hard because you're given so much responsibility and free time, and it's up to you how you want to spend that time. So looking back at myself freshman year to now being a junior, I think I use my time a lot more efficiently. That's one. Two, I think the transition can oftentimes be overlooked. And unfortunately, this question is so subjective because I think it really depends what you're studying and the extent to which you want to succeed in those studies. So being a business economics major, although very challenging, it's far different than me studying pre-med. One of my teammates studies pre-med, and he probably does triple, if not 4 times the amount of work I do just because it's so intensive. So again, I think it relates back to what you want to study and then the standards for which you want to meet in those studies. If you're content getting B's and C's, that's probably a lot less work than if you're striving to get A's in classes. But overall, I think I found the transition not nearly as difficult as I made it out to be. I think what no one tells you is that as a college student, you have so much time. And again, I just said it, but it depends how you use that time and how efficient you are with your time. You can get a lot done in a week. Just depends if you want to get it done or not.
What is your goal coming out of this business economics, like professionally? If you had a choice, what would you want to do with it?
That's a really great question. I go back and forth. I think one day I'd really like to work in the venture capital space. It just seems very interesting, investing early stage companies, helping them grow and achieve their goals. So I think that's end goal for me. It's a very difficult space to get into, and it more than likely won't happen. But for now, that's one of my goals in life.
When I went to school, I was actually a business major, but I was marketing, so way different than economics or accounting. It's the easy stuff. And I couldn't believe how the syllabus or the curriculum wasn't like the real world. And that was 20 odd years ago. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for a curriculum to stay current today, because the business world is changing so much with tech space and just society in general. How do you find that you're learning, that the transfer is quite strong with the real world?
I think you're exactly correct, where oftentimes the syllabus does not match up with what is happening in the world, especially with economics, because a lot of it is theory-based. And I found that if you're an economics major, you're more or less improving your ability to solve problems versus actually analyzing, conceptualizing real-world problems. And so what that'll look like is a ton of hypothetical scenarios where you will have to solve a complicated problem. And so you're really honing in on that skill. I really wish that economics, as a concentration in Brown, incorporated more real world stuff. And to the credit of the professors, I think they do a fantastic job of sprinkling it into day-to-day lectures. But and transitioning to my other major, environmental studies, that was actually the main reason I wanted to study the environment, is because the curriculum at Brown is incredibly real world. Basically everything you read, even if it's a theory, it's paired with a case study. And so I found that in my environmental studies, I'm learning about things that are actually happening in the world, and it's giving me a completely and more well-rounded perspective, sort of, in what goes on. And obviously it's specific to the environment, but again, I greatly appreciate that I'm learning about what actually happens in the world. It's not just some made up scenario like you would find in most economics classes. And yeah, I think it's important to have a well-rounded education. So getting those problem-solving skills is incredibly important, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But again, you're going to want to take classes that expose you to the real world. I'll give you an example, and I'm incredibly fortunate, but there's a seminar called Global Football Management that I'm taking this spring with a few of my teammates. And essentially we're learning about football or soccer as an industry to go work in, as you would treat any other industry. Football right now is growing tremendously. There's been a ton of investments in European teams, South American clubs. Even with the USL, some of these teams are valued at tens of millions of dollars, which is absolutely ridiculous and yet to be justified. But those are sort of the real world things we're learning about in that class. And it's been my favorite class so far, just because of those real world implications. And you can finally put what you're learning in the classroom to a real world scenario and offer your own perspective and analysis on it.
Well, that's very interesting. It's actually very interesting that that's now becoming part of modern day US educational systems. It's kind of crazy how the game's grown like that. Wow.
Oh, I've learned so many different things about the game that I didn't even imagine existed. A lot of very interesting owners, people, that kind of thing. Yeah, I won't go on a tangent, but it's pretty ridiculous.
Very, very, very good. I wish that was in. I was learning about two trucks taking off at different stops and who was stopping. Yeah.
You're selling coconuts and ice cream on an island, and you want to figure out the most efficient way to sell a quantity of both of them.
Hey, last two questions for you. First, from a parent perspective, you talked there about time management, and how did your parents help you get, because independence in college is something that we all talk about, but yet very, very hard to practically prepare someone and support them through the process of playing sport at a high level and high level academics. What do you think that your parents did, whether consciously, subconsciously, formally or informally, that prepared you to deal and live in that space where you're right, that you talked about that hunger and drive. You basically use that time how you want, but you want to be successful, you got to use it right. What are some things that, from a parent standpoint?
I think, and I have absolutely incredible parents, like Hall of Fame parents. They're amazing. But I think the most successful thing they did was putting me in the correct environments. And what that means is they surrounded me with mentors, friends, people who in themselves were incredibly hardworking. And it's a really great question. I think parents, and from my experience with friends, classmates, teammates, whatever, a lot of them can have the tendency of holding their kids' hands and sort of guiding them through everything. And in my opinion, and if I was a parent, I probably wouldn't do that. I would put them in the environments where they can succeed themselves. And why I gave my parents so much credit is they urged me to go to a private high school called Noble and Greeno. And it was rigorous, it was difficult, but I found it such a rewarding experience because I was surrounded by such motivated, intelligent, smart people. And an environment like that more or less inspires you to work hard on your own because you're just surrounded by it every day. And so that's one example. Another example would be playing on Andy Prosser's GPS team. I think one of the reasons we were so good is because we had one of the most, if not the most amazing team culture I've ever been a part of and probably witnessed. Everyone was so close. And again, those environments kind of feed on themselves and produce good players and, more importantly, good people. And that's something that Andy, he always instilled on us is that, okay, we play soccer together 4 or 5 days a week. We're not just developing good players, that's the goal, but we're trying to develop good people. And that sort of cultivated itself through the relationships we had on the team where everyone wanted to work hard for each other. And I don't know if that answers the question, but
it definitely does. Yeah, it definitely does. The environment piece is. It sounds like your parents put you in those environments, and then there's a certain part of like not stepping back completely, but obviously trusting that environment as well.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to touch on. Is my parents pretty much trust me in anything I do in life. They're there to offer support, but they trust my decisions 100%. They had absolutely no say in me going to Brown. They left the decision for me to go to a private high school in my hands. That's 100% what they wanted me to do. But if I didn't want to go, then that's okay. That's my decision. And to their credit, I was 12 years old at the time, which is a little ridiculous. But I think that's important too, is trusting and having complete trust between kids and parents.
That's a great answer. All right, last one. 16-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid who aspires to, Ivy League, whatever, high-level academics, high-level soccer, maybe professional soccer, whatever it is, but is ambitious on at least one of those things, but isn't necessarily a blue chip player and isn't necessarily an honor roll student, but has the capability and potential to achieve. What are some things that you would say to that player that maybe could help them as the process of college starts and the offers won't be piling in for the first week? They're going to have to do a bit of work here. What would you recommend they do?
I think one thing that's overlooked is standardized testing. And it sucks to take the SAT or the ACT. It sucks to study for them, but you can buy a prep book for $30 used, read the whole thing front to back, which again, that's something no one wants to do. But I guarantee if you do that, do a number of practice exams that are all available free online and get those SAT and ACT scores up, it'll certainly make you stand out to other players that are trying to play where you are. It can be hard to have really good grades, but if you have good test scores, and more often than not shows, one, you're a good student, and two, you're dedicated and determined to play where you want to play. And something like standardized tests, I think anyone can do well on them. It's more or less your preparation going into it. So I think one, that's really important. Two, this is a difficult question. maybe it goes back to the environment piece, but, surround yourself with people who have the same goals as you and try and connect with people who are in the shoes that you want to fill. And that's true in any aspect of life, whether it's career, whatever. But if you can get good advice from people that went through the process you did and got to where you want to be, then, don't become a copy and paste of them and what they did, but take the lessons they learned and what they did to get there to sort of pave your own path.
Yeah, I tell you what, I love your first answer about the standardized testing, because that's
so true. It's so true, though.
Version of that's how bad you want it, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what our coaches will tell us too. A player will immediately stand out if they play for a good team and have a good test score. More often than not, a player is going to get looked at if they're on a good team and have good test scores, because obviously at good schools you need test scores to get in. I know some schools are test optional now, but I believe most places, and I think Brown is changing that.
Yeah, if you want to do it, you're probably going to jump over 80 to 90% of people who look at it negatively and don't want to be successful, don't want to do the test. So,
it's 2-3 months of studying, a couple hours a day, which sucks. Don't get me wrong. I dreaded every second of it, but it's just up to you. You know what I mean?
Class. Harri, this has flown by. Thank you so much for coming on, and wow, amazing perspective, and just an impressive overall view of how to approach the game and life and school and everything else with it, with a real strong mindset. So I commend you on what you're doing, and I thank you for jumping on. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having me.